Let me ask you this. You wake up every morning to go to your 9 to 5, you sit at your desk if you're at a corporate job, or you take on whatever role it is that you're being paid for. Now you do this for 30 to 40 years of your life, all for a paycheck. But have you ever stopped yourself and asked, what does Islam say about what I'm doing to make this money? In this video, I'm going to highlight some of the many issues that Muslims face working in a traditional 9 to 5 in the West, and what you can do to actually overcome those issues. We'll start by actually going over what Islam says about wealth, the problems a lot of Muslims face in a traditional 9 to 5 role. We'll go over navigating Islamic obstacles in the workforce. We'll even go over some practical steps you can take to make sure you don't rely on your 9 to 5 as a source of income. In Islam, wealth itself is not a problem. Money is not haram. Rather, when we look at the Quran and Hadith, we find that wealth is actually a blessing from Allah. But the difference comes in how you make that money and what you do with it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran actually that do not consume one another's wealth unjustly, but only in lawful business by mutual consent. And for a Muslim in the workforce, this just means two things. Number one is the way you earn must be halal, of course, and the system you're a part of should be fair and not exploitive in any way. And the Prophet, he adds on to this when he says in Hadith in Sunan Ibn Majah that the best of what a man consumes is what he earns from his own hand. So rather, it's not just an obligation you have to commit, but if you do so, this is a very noble aspect, part of our faith to begin with. Providing for your family, providing for yourself, having a source of income, having a job is a huge virtue in the eyes of Allah. So yes, your income matters. Yes, it's important for you to have a paycheck. But your paycheck isn't just money. It's your responsibility as a Muslim man or woman to do what you can to make sure you're providing for your family to the best of your abilities, of course, and also doing it in a manner which is sufficient and keeps Allah happy with you. Islam also reminds us to not get caught up in all the illusions and all the negative effects that come with wealth. Prophet mentioned in the hadith in Sahih Bukhari that true wealth is actually what you send ahead for the hereafter, because what you work for in this world, that's going to be left behind for your inheritors. And really, I want you to think about this. Imagine all the money you're going to make in your entire lifetime with your job, whatever source of income you have. How much of that will you actually use? Realistically speaking, most of the time you're just getting by. Most of the time you're just using this money to go from one day to the next, to provide for yourself, to pay for your house, to pay for groceries, to pay for the very minimal things. And how much of that wealth are you actually investing in your hereafter, for your akhirah, for your eternal home? And the rest of the money which you don't spend or you don't invest, it's going to be left behind. Your children, your grandchildren, they're the ones that actually going to be ending up probably taking full benefit of it. So don't get me wrong, Islam doesn't say it's haram to have a job, it's haram to have a 9 to 5. Rather, earning a lawful income is an act of worship and a means of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the golden question we're actually going to highlight throughout this video is, does your traditional 9 to 5 actually allow you to attain a paycheck while not displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any single way? Or is this paycheck pushing you in the wrong direction, actually taking you away from Allah? Now, let's be real for a second here. The traditional 9 to 5 has obstacles for a Muslim, at least for the Muslim in the West. If you're out in a Muslim country where the workforce is Muslim, the company is Muslim owned and operated, most of the time you won't have some of these issues. But for the average Muslim living in the West, 100% they do. And I will go on to say a very bold statement probably is that the workforce in the West is not meant for a Muslim. And these challenges are not just office politics or the stress you have of the workload. Rather, they cut right into your deen. And I want you to really go back and think about when you got your first interview, before you even started working in your role and getting that paycheck. You might have actually felt a bit of pressure to tone down your Islam. Maybe if you're a Muslim brother, you thought that, hey, you know what, maybe my beard's getting a little bit too big. Let me just trim it up a little bit just so I don't look too Muslim. If you're a Muslim sister and you have a very simple way of tying your hijab or not really doing too much makeup, you may have thought otherwise for this interview. And as this interview was going on, while your employer was asking you questions and you were responding to them, you probably question yourself, should I mention that I'm going to need some time off to pray? Should I bring up the fact that, when it's Eid time and we actually don't know when the moon will be sighted, I'll have to take those days off? And will any of these things, if I tell them right now, will it make me feel less committed to this role and probably put me in a position where they don't hire me. So you see, from the very beginning, your iman is already being tested. Do I present myself as a practicing Muslim, or do I do whatever I can to make sure I fit in with everyone else around there? And you know what? Say, alhamdulillah, the interview goes very, very well. And maybe you didn't have to downplay your Islam and how practicing you were altogether. You start working and you're going with your day-to-day job and you realize, you know what? Now I actually have some bigger problems to deal with. How many times you check on your clock or your phone to see, do I still have time to pray Dhuhr after this meeting is done? Or you're stuck in back-to-back calls. Or maybe you're working on site where you don't have the ability to actively leave your position, your post to pray. Or maybe after work, your work buddies and colleagues, they hit you up and they say, hey, Ahmed, we're hitting up the bar next door. We're just gonna, let loose and, relax. It'll be nice for you to come in. And you feel that doubt coming in that, yeah, you know what, I'll go. I'm not gonna drink or anything. I'll just have a little Coke or something like that. But your iman is knocking on your door, telling you this is something you should not be involved in. And unfortunately, the reality is this is the average experience of the Muslim in the 9 to 5. At least those who are practicing or trying to become better Muslims. Salah, the very thing that connects us to Allah 5 times a day, becomes a means of an obstacle for us to do so. Understanding what Islam says about not touching a non-mahram in person with the opposite gender, it starts to become a question if your boss or employer puts their hand out. But if that question ever comes up during work, you automatically try to consider it just to make sure you're fitting in. And it's very obvious why we have these doubts, why we have this fear creep in within us during the workforce when we're presented these situations. We are afraid. We're afraid to think what our boss will think of me. We're afraid to see that our colleagues will think differently of me, treat me differently. And maybe that will actually affect not only my performance at the job, but also me having a job to begin with. Will they see me as being difficult to work with, to not being a team player, and just overall too religious? Which, let's be honest, is a good thing. We should want that, but here we are questioning it. But here's the cold hard truth. When you start worrying more about what your boss, your manager, your employer thinks of you more than what Allah thinks of you, you're putting yourself in a very difficult position. This is a dangerous place for any Muslim to be, no matter what situation they're involved in, no matter what headaches they have in their life, all the tests they're dealing with, but putting anyone else above Allah is a danger zone. And this is the biggest trap that a 9 to 5 puts us in. Relying more so on our employer and our paycheck rather than Allah Himself, the one who is the true provider. We act as if our livelihood, me getting by, me providing for my family, is in the hands of this paycheck. But the Quran reminds us there's not a single creature except that Allah is the one who provides for him. Your risk does not come from HR. It doesn't come from your boss mentioning how great of a work employee you are. It doesn't come from the shareholders of the company. It comes from Allah. Your job is just a means. But that 9 to 5 grind makes it so easy for us to forget that. To the effect we feel that our boss is the provider rather than the one who actually provides. And then there's a typical work environment which we know very well. It's so haram at point, but it's so normal in the workforce. Whether that's Friday night happy hour or the gossiping that happens, or it could even be what clothing our coworkers are even wearing, which we know we got to keep our gaze down from. These things become so normal. We become so accustomed to it, so it's hard for us to even see this as a sin. Slowly what you see is this Islam you built up for, that you were learning towards, which your parents put so much time in making sure you had an Islamic and pious upbringing. It starts to get watered down, slowly but surely. All for what? Just so you make sure that you get your paycheck. So while your paycheck looks stable, it's coming in every 2 weeks or it's coming in every month, but the cost is high. Your salah gets delayed, your deen gets hidden, and you don't really see yourself practicing Islam during your work time. You feel like being a Muslim comes on pause during your 9 to 5. And you know what? When you're back at home, then you can become Muslim once again. Now, as Muslims, our job isn't just to talk about all the problems and how horrible they are for us. We want to come with solutions. How do you actually deal with these problems in the workforce to make sure that your paycheck doesn't get in the way of you worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So let's talk about navigating these Islamic obstacles in the workforce. The very first thing you need to remember and remind yourself is that you are a Muslim first. You are an employee second. Your salah, your deen, your obedience to Allah comes before anything else. But if you start your workday thinking that, you know what, my boss is the one who's going to take care of me. As long as my boss is happy, everything else will go smooth. I'm sorry to tell you this, but you've already lost. Rather, start your day with this mindset that I'm here to please Allah and my work is actually a part of my ibadah. Because this is what Islam teaches us. If our intention for something is good, then the outcome for that will be good as well. This applies for every realm of your life. life. When you're eating, make that intention that I'm getting this nourishment so I can worship Allah more, give myself more energy in my salah, or to read Quran, or spend time with my wife and children. Now that entire meal you ate actually becomes worship. So do that for your job as well, and the entire time you spend there can actually turn into worship as well. And we talked about how our typical problems in the 9 to 5 actually start with us landing that job, the interview. So from the very start, be very transparent. Make it clear what your religion entails in terms of you being involved in your typical duties as an employee, how Salah fits in with your schedule, what Eid is like and you don't really know what day it will fall upon, or anything else you can think of that will affect you being a Muslim in your specific work environment. Why? Because it sets the tone. You're showing them who you are up front. And believe me, a lot of employers actually find that very attractive. They like working with people. They like hiring people who are real. They accept who they are as their identity. And if for whatever reason this company does not hire you based off of what you mentioned there, don't stress. This place was never meant to provide you your list, so Allah will find a better place for you. Another major thing which also helps set the tone is actually set your boundaries. Of course, you're going to be faced with invitations to go out to a local bar for happy hour, join the gossiping circles, or even in your role compromise on your honesty. Here's how you deal with it. Draw your line clearly and respectfully. You don't have to be disrespectful and just go off on them. How dare you not let me pray when I have to? At the end of the day, you are the one putting yourself in this position. If you are clear with what your religion teaches you, how you can be doing certain things which are very, very common, not only will this actually give you a reason to stay away from them without it affecting your work relations, rather this can also turn into a means of da'wah to the people around you. When your colleagues see you standing up for yourself, standing up for what you believe in and what your values are, they're going to respect you one way or another. They don't have to understand it. They just have to accept it that it is what it is. And let's talk about Salah, because this is probably hands down one of the biggest struggles that the average Muslim in the West working a traditional 9 to 5 faces. Don't hide it and don't play it down as if it's okay if you delay it or even if you miss it. Be upfront about it when you need to pray. You know, some places actually it's a legal requirement to give you break time, whether it's for lunch or whatever it is. If you can use that time to do so without it getting in the way with your day-to-day responsibilities, then do so. However, if it requires that you have to go out of that time frame, if Duha or Asr is not coming during that time when you have your lunch breaks, then be clear about it. Let your employer know, listen, you know, I would have loved to do this during my lunch hour. However, the way the timings are, unfortunately, I'm not able to do so. So I just need 5 to 10 minutes to find a place to pray and I'll come back at it. There is no reason for them to reject this. You know, some places people take breaks all the time, whether it's to use a bathroom, whether it's to get on a personal phone call or a smoke break. So why can't you, as another employee, use that time to pray? And in the average work environment or company, you know, there's a lot of legalities that people have to follow. So most probably or not, you shouldn't have this issue as long as you're clear about what you need to do. And if for whatever reason this does become an issue, then you know what to do. Either you become a little bit more stern about it or you find another place to work. Salah is not something you do if it just happens to work out. Salah is our lifeline. We need to do it. And if everything I've mentioned so far, you feel a little bit nervous about it, you feel that, I don't know, man, how are they going to take this? How's my boss going to think of me? Remind yourself, you're not asking for a right to do something optional. You're asking for the right to worship Allah. And throughout all of this, keep on reminding yourself that risk, sustenance, money, wealth comes from Allah. It doesn't matter who your employer is, what company you're working at, how colleagues feel about you, it comes from Allah Himself. You could give in to every single thing that your company asks for and not act as if a Muslim at all. But if Allah says you are not gonna get a dime from this specific role, then that's what's gonna happen. So yes, your work environment can come with real problems, but there are a lot of practical and real solutions that you can navigate through. And with the right mindset and actively taking these steps, and of course, asking Allah to help you through this process, inshallah, you make it through. But here's a bigger question. Should you be spending your whole life just navigating through these problems, or is there another path? One where you're actually in control of your time, your values, and how much you make. And that's what we'll cover next, is how can you make sure you don't rely on this traditional 9 to 5. Here's a cold hard truth which so many Muslims living in the West have a hard time grasping, and I don't know why. You don't have to rely on a 9 to 5 to make a living. Some Muslims hear that and they go crazy. Allah has opened the doors of countless halal opportunities, especially in 2025 with all the different avenues we have to make more money on the side. All this so what? Not just so we make more money, so we don't have to face these problems that we've been going through. Think about this. The Prophet ﷺ throughout the hadith has encouraged us to have an income. He has encouraged trade, business and having an honest work. We know many of the Sahaba were actually business owners, and some of them were very wealthy. We can't really say they only relied on one source of income. They sought halal risk in different ways, and you as a Muslim right now should be doing the same. So why do we as Muslims feel just obliged to rely on just one income with one employer, knowing we're facing all these issues? Now, I'm not telling you to quit your job tomorrow. That wouldn't be wise at all. But here's what you can do. Start with something on the side. Something halal, something which aligns with your interests, something which you have a desire for to learn, a service, a skill, anything which you can use to leverage and get paid to do it. And the beauty of a side hustle, no matter what you choose in this endless ocean of side hustles out there of making internet money, is that you have options. You're no longer fully dependent on your employer, your boss, your 9 to 5 to survive. And believe me when I tell you, after working with countless Muslims and helping them set up their own halal businesses, the confidence, the relief that it brings is incomparable. Because at that stage, if you are having any issues with your boss, you have some sort of leverage that, hey, even if I ask my boss to draw this boundary and it goes sideways, at least I have another source of income. And I want you to imagine this, just envision this for a second, that along with your current 9 to 5, you have a stable side hustle bringing in an extra amount of income. And the amount this side hustle brings in is really up to you how much you need. It could be $1,000, it could be $5,000 a month. Suddenly, praying on time at your job isn't a problem. Taking Eid off isn't a battle. You don't fear losing your job because you're no longer chained to it. And now, alhamdulillah, you're free to live by your own deen, the values, the principles you know are strong and true to you without fear. And if Allah puts barakah in this side hustle and it grows, alhamdulillah, you may even reach a point where you're able to leave your 9 to 5 altogether and go all in on your side hustle. And believe me when I tell you, it's really possible. This is more than just money. It's about having control. It's about having freedom. It's about living a life where your income serves your deen, not the other way around, where your deen isn't being compromised for a paycheck. So now the question is, will you continue relying on a system which was not built for Muslims, or will you make a change? Take some practical steps to actually take control of your income and make sure it's something which Allah is happy with, something which you never have to question, because the opportunity is there, the internet is filled with them. Of course, do your due diligence to make sure that whatever you get involved in is halal, of course, and say Bismillah and start your journey. And if you're not sure where to start, I've built a free school community where hundreds of Muslims like you, along with their 9 to 5, are able to add an extra income, all based off of how much time and commitment they want to give to it, which they can scale up to $10,000 a month and eventually leave their 9 to 5 altogether. So if you're interested in that, I'll drop the link below, so make sure you join that.